Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. My name is John Paul Tsipadi. Today I'm joined by Jonathan Chia, and here are your 5 headlines for today. Malta Scala Local Council has voted against a proposed yacht marina in the locality. A baby has joined its mother in prison as she serves a year-long sentence. Local football club Hibs have officially filed a protest with UEFA after unacceptable referee decision last weekend. Pop star Io Losco has cleared her name after being accused of involvement in a viral street fight video. Asha and Gozo have teamed up to create a spectacular balloon Talblalen firework display for Santa Maria. Before we get into that, make sure to stick around to the end of the episode where we have a special interview with Environment Minister Anne Farrugia to discuss the hot topic of climate change, not only affecting Malta, but the rest of the world this summer. But first, the Malta Scala Local Council has voted against a proposal to develop a yacht marina in the town's picturesque bay. If you've been following the news this week, you know that the talk of the town is this proposed yacht marina idea that has kind of stirred the local residents of Malta Scala and ruffled a few feathers. Yesterday, PL Councillor Ryan Portelli filed a motion after Transport Malta issued an expression of interest for the proposed development. And in a council meeting last evening, extraordinarily, the council strongly voted against the proposal and criticised Transport Malta for issuing its EOI without first consulting it and Malta Scala residents. Malta Scala Mayor Mario Calleja said that Transport Malta had informed him that the preliminary design for the marina was simply an artist's rendition of it. However, the mayor insisted that Malta Scala residents should be involved in any decision as to whether the development should go ahead or not, refusing to rule out a town-wide referendum.
You know, this is one of the hottest stories over the last week, and we do have the Environment Minister with us today. We will talk about this a little bit with him as well. What I thought was really interesting is, earlier this week there was a petition launched by residents, calling for, a reassessment of these plans, which actually go back at least 15 years. And in this petition, they had actually asked for a referendum, something that now the mayor is calling for as well. So very, very interesting. We actually see a referendum over local plans. That would be quite an interesting step to see in Malta. So definitely stay tuned for further developments on that front. Moving on to the next story, a bit of a shocking one to come from Malta's prison. So obviously we had the story of the Turkish mothers a few weeks back that had, kind of stirred a lot of emotions. And now we've got a new story of another mother who has a baby with her inside her prison cell. It's quite a shocking story, and the details are quite telling. So this is a mother who, similar to the Turkish mothers, had been found with fake documents in Malta. And she was tried in court and she was found guilty and she was sentenced to 1 year in prison. Now she has 3 children, a 1-year-old, an under 1-year-old, a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. The 2 and 3-year-old are in state care, but under Maltese law, you can actually have an under 1-year-old baby with you in prison. The idea is obviously not to separate the mother and the child, but the story is kind of, elicited a lot of anger and emotions. Should a baby be in prison? Is that really the best place for a baby? I understand that he or she should not be separated from the mother, but questions are raised. Is that really the best environment for a child? Is it a prison cell?
Especially considering the rumors surrounding prison recently and the questionable standards in there, you would think that a child being in there, obviously, in the first place, is not a good idea. And going back to those Turkish mothers, actually, that outcry resulted in them being removed from prison and reunited with their kids. So maybe we can see something being a better solution here for the under 1-year-old. Moving on to our third story. Local football club Hibs have officially filed a protest with UEFA after what they consider to be unacceptable behaviour by the referee in last weekend's match against Riga in the newly erected UEFA Conference League. It was quite a big match, not just for Hibs but for Malta in total, in general, which would meant if Hibs won this match on aggregate, they would have been the first Maltese team to have actually advanced this far in a UEFA tournament. They were in fact could have pocketed around €3 million for reaching that phase. It seemed to be the ball was in their court, and they seemed to be on a good track to winning the game after winning against Riga in a way. But the poor refereeing decisions and officiating by Irish referee Rob Hennessy and his team meant that Hibs lost on aggregate 4-1. The local club and many people argue that the game was decided by poor officiating, which included awarding an unjust penalty to Riga, annulling a goal by Jurgen de Gabriel and allowing 7 minutes of extra time, which ended with Riga scoring 2 goals to give them the lead over Hibs and advancing to the next round. Hibs crashed and burned and are out of the Conference League, which obviously is a terrible news. A lot of people were outraged, including opposition MP or a PNMP, Jason Azzopardi, even Home Affairs Minister Byron Camilleri. So it was the whole of Malta, not just Hibs, who were outraged at his decision. And Hibs have now filed an official protest with UEFA following the match.
That's exactly right. It was a very heartbreaking moment, and as you just said, this was something that kind of clear divisions. You had people from the Labour side, people from the National side, you had independents, everyone coming together to show support for this team. And as you referred to, we had PNMP Jason Azzopardi delivering some choice words in the ground as the decisions were being taken, just to show you how emotional people were getting on that. So let's see, if this complaint gets anywhere with UEFA. Moving on to the next story, a bit of a quirky one coming out from Malta, obviously. Has to be, right? It wouldn't be Malta if we didn't have a story like this. So one of Malta's most famous and beloved musicians had to take to social media to clear her name after a video of a street fight went viral. So maybe you saw this video. 2 cars had pulled up next to each other. They started shouting at each other. Hands were thrown. And one of the cars had a license plate that said ERA on it. So people did 1 + 1. They got 17, and they decided that the car must belong to Ira Lusko or even her sisters. So she had to take to Facebook, to social media, and she said, quote, just saying there's more than one Ira in Malta, and that person in the car is not me. We actually spoke to Ira Lusko a little bit, and she was actually, a little bit hurt, a little bit emotional. Apparently she had been, her and her sisters had been barraged with a few messages. Some people had even mentioned it as they were walking in the streets. So I can just imagine what it must be like, for a video to go viral, something you have nothing to do with. Your name somehow appears and all of a sudden people think that you are involved. And if you saw the video itself, it was not the most flattering video. We had people acting really brazenly and really angrily for no reason. So just so you guys know, it was not Ira Lusko.
Yeah, no, rumors spread like wildfire, especially on an island like Malta. And to finish off, Santa Maria ended with a beautiful display of fireworks, with one photographer snapping a stunning photo during one of the key moments, which was the balloon Talblalen, which shined over Malta's sister island Gozo, captured by local photographer Daniel Chia. I'm sure you see the photo on your screen. A beautiful display of fireworks. Great to see after what's felt like so long since we've had like festi and fireworks and celebrations. I know a lot of people complain about having fireworks every weekend, but I think this weekend last weekend to actually have seen some fireworks and hear them go off and stuff was warm and welcoming. See that things are maybe edging back to normality, even though once it's back to normal, people are going to complain there's too many fireworks, I imagine. But it was a beautiful display of fireworks, and it was a result of months of hard work by Jason Fall from the St. Joseph Fireworks in Halasha. And this photographer, Daniel Chia, wanted to give them a shout out and took this incredible photo to end Santa Maria.
We have a selection of some of the best firework displays on lovinmalta.com, so you can definitely check it out there. But what was really cool was that you had people from Asha teaming up with people from Gozo to create such a spectacular display. Like, Malta may be tiny, but when it comes to fireworks, we are very serious, and it's very, very impressive. That brings us to the end of the first part of today's episode. We're going to cut to a quick video, and when we're back, we'll have Environment Minister Aaron Farrugia in the building with us.
In Malta, we don't say.
Take a seat, yes please. So we're back on Lovin Daily. Today we've got a special guest, Environment Minister Aaron Farrugia. Thank you so much for coming in this morning.
Good morning, Jonathan.
So I just wanted to make it a point that you are the first minister to accept our invitation for a live interview on Lovin Daily, so we really appreciate that. Thank you so much for that.
That's news.
So we wanted to bring you in a little bit to speak about the major issue of climate change. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of climate change, I did want to speak about Marsa Scala and the Marina project, because that's been a very hot topic this week. So obviously residents have spoken out about it. The local council had a decision yesterday, and it seems, at least when it comes to Transport Malta's response to this, we keep referring back to this 2006 local plans. Are there any plans to reassess what happened in 2006 and the vision laid out for the country? That was 15 years ago. Obviously the islands moved quite forward since then. Are those plans still relevant, or should we reassess them?
That's what we are doing right now with this PED review. I mean, the strategic plan for the environment and planning is just that. It's an exercise looking at what Malta needs in the next, say, 30 to 50 years. Now, when that exercise is over and we're having a number of studies on demographics, on what the country needs in terms of economy and the environment, then the local plans will be reviewed. I don't know in which way. I mean, I have plenty of families calling me every day, telling me that unjustly their piece of land, their stretch of land, has not been included in the development zone, and they feel like this is injustice. So, you get messages from both sides. Government will have to decide then.
So exactly on this topic, when you have an ambitious project or a plan that you want to push through, how hard is it to push through when you have such a vocal population like we have in Malta who are ready to comment on everything? Is it a challenge kind of getting them on board with your plans?
Well, you know what? Government has to decide. I mean, the problem with the previous government was just that, not deciding. And that's why people changed administration. Now, there is this not in my backyard syndrome too. I mean, right now I'm building myself, not me, but on behalf of government, I'm building Malta's waste to energy plant in Malta. People live there, they don't want it. And if there's a vote, they will vote against, of course. But somewhere has to happen. I mean, there's the Malta Freeport in Birzabuja. I can point to the Malta Airport. Nobody wants an airport in Goudia. And if there's a referendum in Goudia, I'm sure that they will vote to have the airport moved somewhere towards Slema or Pachapli, So I'm not saying that we should discard that vote. I'm just saying that I'm not surprised. And I think more dialogue is necessary between both government, local councils, and the people. And then government has to decide. And then the government will be assessed on such decisions,
So when it comes to building rights, as it were, in Malta, we seem a bit obsessed with construction and building wherever we can. I wanted to get your kind of personal view on it. Does one's right to build supersede one's right to fresh air, a clean environment, a good quality of life?
That's tricky. I tell you why. In 2006, back then, the government had ample discussions and even dialogues with the Chamber of Commerce, the people out there, the environmentalists, and they agreed on a way forward. The local plans of 2006. Now, since then, no administration has changed those local plans, not even by 1 centimeter. Now, what we're doing right now is assessing what we need for the next, say, 30 to 50 years. But what's happening is just walking our talk. 2006 local plans, they are being implemented. Now, every project needs to be assessed, but this is very, 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 very tricky. I mean, if there's someone out there, there's a family of 4, and they have, say, a terrace house, and they want to pull it down, and according to the local plan, they want to build a 4+1. 3 apartments for the kids, the penthouse for the parents. Should someone tell them, no, let's go back to the terraced house? That is the question. I mean, so far, no party has declared that they will change the local plans. What we're saying is we are reviewing this PED and then we'll decide from there. But no party, which is in parliament at least, or stands a chance of being in parliament, is saying that they will change local plans. Not at all. There is no position.
Now, obviously, right now, you are the minister responsible for this. So when it comes to you, your personal view, will these plans be changed? And if you said you're reassessing them, is there a timeline at all, or is it a bit vague? We have a bit of a timeline?
There's a timeline.
Which is?
So it started late in 2020, that is, first weeks of 2021. It will take 3 years because we are basically studying the demographics, what kind of demographics we will have for the next 30 to 50 years, what kind of economy we're going to have, service-based, manufacturing-based, and all that. And then government, in the next legislature, will have to decide on the way forward. I'm the minister responsible for not just the environment, but construction too, planning, and someone has to decide. That is very important, that you wake up in the morning and you decide.
Now, moving on to climate change, which is a major topic, I can tell you, everyone within our generation, this is really weighing heavy on their mind. Just this week, we did a poll asking people if, how they'd react to climate change. Some people said they were ready not to have children That's how worrying this topic is. So obviously we're seeing some crazy scenes around the world. Athens is on fire. And just this week in Malta, just this month in Malta, we've had some incredibly tremendous high temperatures. So climate change is very, very real, and we're really seeing it. With these crazy scenes that we're seeing abroad, are you considering any radical measures to address climate change, at least as far as the Maltese government is concerned?
Let's put everything into perspective. There's a COP26 conference coming up in Glasgow in November. And that's where the big guns of the likes of China, India, United States of America, Russia, will decide on the way forward together with the other 190 countries, all signatories like Malta, of the Paris Agreement. Now we're doing our work. I mean, this is the first time that the Maltese government has a plan, a tangible plan, costed, which has already started being implemented, and which will help us achieve our international targets, not chosen by us, but by the European Commission. 19% decrease in our emissions. It's going to be very hard to achieve that. It's not going to be a walk in the park, not an easy feat, but we plan to do that. I mean, the plan, which we drafted with our local partners, Ernst & Young, and an international company, which is Eunomia, which helped other countries draft their own plan, which will help us achieve our 2030 targets and then move towards carbon neutrality by 2050. So hand on heart, we did our work. We spent like a year working on this plan, because you have to rope in not just the ministry responsible for the environment and climate change, but also the transport ministry, the energy ministry, the finance ministry, of course, because it's going to be very expensive to achieve this. But yes, at cabinet level, I managed to pass through this cabinet memo, which is a very ambitious way forward for Malta. And we also managed to negotiate this target of 19% at Commission level. And truly, I mean, both the President of the European Commission and the likes of Chancellor Merkel understood Malta's position that we are the lowest emitters per capita from amongst all member states of the European Union. And that's why they agreed on the 19% target. That's very ambitious. Now, collectively, we're going to move towards 55% less of emissions on the European level. And that's where the European Union is avant-garde, it's very ambitious compared to other continents. And that's why we go confident towards COP26 in Glasgow in November. Now, of course, all hands on deck. We'll see what other countries will come up with. There were a couple of meetings in the last few weeks, and they're not very promising. I mean, some countries didn't even turn up for the meeting.
Really?
You know?
Like who?
Like India, for example. And that's worrying, and that's where the biggest emissions are coming from, not from Malta, you know? Even though I'm not saying that Malta should not do its part, and we're doing that. So hand on heart, I think we're moving in the right direction.
You know, you talk about big guns abroad, but there is one sector that Malta is a bit of a big gun in. That's when it comes to maritime shipping. Malta has the largest European boat registry. We've got over 8,000 ships registered to Malta, and the shipping industry causes lots of emissions, you know, from sulfur, oxide, nitrogen oxide, PM 2.5, which is a very, very harmful, toxic particle. What are we doing to set the standard when it comes to good practices when it comes to shipping?
So when it comes to shipping, I think we're moving in the right direction. Just to mention one example, the Ship to Shore project, 50 million euro of European funds, which we're using just to lower our emissions. Now, we have to be very careful and tread carefully when it comes to the taxation on kerosene, when it comes to the maritime industry, because that's where plenty of livelihoods are. Let me give you one example. When it comes to the automotive industry, the German government is, position itself in a very robust way when it comes to negotiating. And what I'm saying is that we have to move towards carbon neutrality in each sector. Now, the maritime and the aviation sector are being added. That's the suggestion way forward. Way forward that these both sectors are added to other sectors which we have already. The Maltese government has to take consideration of the economic, social assessment on such a taxation on kerosene. Let me tell you why. because most of our goods are shipped to Malta. So all commodities will see a markup. And that's where the vulnerable then will, So it's not just thinking purely environment. You have to think social, you have to think economic.
So it kind of goes back to what we were saying a bit before. If you have an ambitious plan or project, it can be a bit difficult with a vocal population. And similarly, is it going to be harder for us to tackle climate change because people might call out because of kerosene prices or taxes? I mean, that's genuinely worrying if it's going to be harder to tackle climate change.
No, let me tell you why. If you had to look at our emissions, let's say you have a pie chart, okay? Half of that pie chart belongs to the transport sector. And that's where we're going to spend a lot of money, taxpayers' money at the end of the day, to have this modal shift. And we're promoting from pedelecs to e-scooters to e-bikes, but not just that. I mean, the plan, if you had time to look at it, shows that we have to turn 65,000 vehicles into electric cars. 65,000 by 2030, that's 9 years from now. And not just, we're saying that public transport will be free, not just for the 18-year-olds and the 16-year-olds or the 65 plus, but even for myself, who I'm going to turn 42 next year, So, and that's very ambitious, that costs money. I mean, to offer free public transport to all people in Malta is very expensive. So, really and truly, I think we're pushing all the buttons when it comes to the transport sector, which is vital for us in terms of lowering our emissions, the buildings, retrofitting, energy efficient. We're giving a number of schemes to households. We're refurbishing our public buildings too, from hospitals to schools. I mean, we're pushing all buttons to reach that target which we agreed by the European Union.
We'll talk about transport in a moment, but
Sure.
I wanted to talk about individual change a little bit. Over the last few years, there's been major pushes for individual changes. I'm talking about single-use plastics, etc., etc. But really and truly, especially when you look at who's really emitting emissions, it's the major industries that are really causing issues. In Malta, when it comes to industries, are there any proposals or plans in place to minimize their emissions as opposed to someone buying a bottle of water?
So again, during the pandemic, if you can recall that, we had almost 5 mini budgets. The third one included a number of schemes towards the industry to move towards carbon neutrality. And that's what we did like many months from now. And the schemes are being taken by the industry itself. I mean, it was not a walk in the park to tell them that we're going to ban the importation of single-use plastics. But I did it. I mean, I've met the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Chamber of Small SMEs, and they were on board. They want to move in this direction, and we banned in last January, we banned the importation. Now from January coming, we're going to ban the sales of single-use plastics, and that's quite positive. Even when it comes, for example, commercial waste. So far, there wasn't one government, one administration, which said that commercial entities should separate their waste at source. Only households are doing that, but we said that they have to start doing it first from next year. So I think, yes, we're doing that.
Going back to the global push towards a right way of addressing climate change. So you mentioned like India didn't show up for a meeting. Will we be seeing a future where countries who don't play ball on climate change might be punished by the international community?
Well, that is something which I cannot say. I mean, I'm not a member on this international level, but definitely what the climate report said 2 weeks ago is that COP26 is going to be a make or break. It's a red code alert. I mean, we need to lower our emissions by 1.5 degrees Celsius from amongst all now countries, the 190 countries which agreed in Paris in 2015 to move in this direction. Now, back then, the states managed to get China on board, to get India on board, and they signed the agreement. Since then, we'll see. I mean, I'm personally optimistic that we will manage to agree on a way forward. But until then, we'll see. I mean, November coming is going to be a make or break.
Now, jumping on to transport, a very, very important topic. So, Malta's talked a big game when it comes to electric cars. You just touched upon it yourself. And there's clearly incentives being pushed to get people to move towards electric cars. At the same time, there's also a push to get people towards using buses and other, public transportation modes. But isn't individual cars the reason we're kind of here in the first place with the traffic problems as well as pollution problems? And isn't it a bit confusing to incentivize both forms of transport?
Well, let me say that first of all, we are walking our talk by, for example, Malta got 350 million euro for the pandemic. It's the resilience and recovery facility. It's the resilience and recovery plan. So from this 350 million, we managed as a government to allocate 50% of them towards climate change. So that is already, it indicates that government has the environment and the climate change at heart. And this money will be spent on turning the 65,000 electric vehicles up till 2030, which is going to be very difficult. I mean, 65,000 vehicles in 9 years. Can you imagine that?
Do you truly foresee
and we're giving
widespread use of electric vehicles in Malta?
Yes, of course. Now,
Teslas on every corner?
Not Teslas, but there are plenty of other brands. I mean, we're giving 9,000 euro grant for each car. From 6,000, it went to 9,000 just now. I mean, that's a lot. Now, the experts tell us that price parity between internal combustion engine cars and electric cars will be reached in a few years' time. Now, the pandemic might have delayed that, but I hope that the sooner the better, because that's where we want to be in a few years' time. We're going to give public transport for everyone. I mean, there are no more excuses now. If you want to move freely, you have it. It's going to happen between now and 2030. We're also, this is very interesting, we have also a green paper, which you might want to promote as Lovin Malta, about a nice cutoff date. A date from when we will ban the importation of internal combustion engine cars.
Do we know that date?
That's between 2030 and 2034. I mean, it's a green paper. We're asking the people out there, what do you think about this? Now, of course, it's very easy to say, let's do it next year. Why not next year? Let's ban all cars next year. But that will be, there will be a huge impact on most vulnerable, because it is the most vulnerable who will not be able to purchase a 30K car, So we're giving 9K as grants, and I think we're closely matching the price you would have spent on internal combustion engine car. We're promoting pedelecs, we're promoting e-scooters, and we're seeing a lot of e-scooters now everywhere around us. Electric bikes, I have one myself,
Do you use it regularly?
I use it like 3 times a week. I have Tallinn car too.
When was the last time you used the bus?
Last week. But even when I'm abroad, we're using the public buses all the time, so why not use them here as well? I mean, even if my job needs, sometimes I need to be somewhere in 5-10 minutes. You cannot always use public transport. But yes, I mean, it can become more efficient. The more we use it, it becomes more efficient. It's like the chicken and egg situation, So we're spending the money, we have the plan, we're consulting people about a nice cutoff date. What else can we do?
Not everyone has a garage in Malta. Chargers.
Yes.
Is there going to be a charger on every street, outside every house? What's the plan for that?
So Minister Lovin Daily is the minister responsible for energy and renewables too, but also for the infrastructure of electric vehicles. So she is currently rolling out a number of infrastructure like these fast chargers, but also our MFF, the Multi-Annual Financial Framework, which we managed to get more than 2 billion euro for Malta, will focus on this infrastructure. So yes, it's happening too.
Now the next question is about renewable energy, and I know it might be in Miriam Dalli's remit, but I would definitely like to get your take on it a little bit more. So it seems like Malta's in a bit of a perfect location to experiment with offshore solar. Are any plans in that regards underway, and do you feel that Malta is doing enough to kind of meet these future expectations?
So first of all, the European Commission understood that Malta is not just the lowest emitter per capita, but given that Malta is an island member state, we cannot have like wind turbines like other countries do. I was in Luxembourg, they had thousands of them. I was in Ljubljana. I could see thousands of them up till Austria and Vienna. So we cannot have that. When it comes to offshore wind farms, they are very expensive, and technology is just in its infancy. So, but we're pushing that. And in fact, in our low carbon development strategy, we said that we want to turn Gozo into a carbon neutral island even before Malta. And that's where we can explore offshore wind farms, but also PVs, like PV farms, like we're having right now. Yes, all hands on deck. I think that the strategy has three caveats and three variables which we have to look into. The first is the price parity between internal combustion engine cars and electric cars. The sooner the better. Technology, but third, also the government finances. I mean, the pandemic had a huge impact on our finances. So the sooner we recover, the better for climate change schemes and actions.
Similarly, when it comes to agriculture, land, for example, this week we had a story about Imjar. They had proposed to do a solar panel farm on good arable land. The mayor has come out against this. What's your take on it? You know, we need renewable energies, but should we be giving up good, healthy land that can grow food for that energy?
Again, as opposed to what?
Offshore solar, for example.
But that will happen 15 years from now. Who is going to reach the targets of 2030? That's
so what are we going to do this year and next year?
What do you mean?
What are we going to do? We're going to do solar farms on arable land?
Someone has to decide. I mean, it's fine that, listen, if you had to ask all local councils, who wants a yacht marina? Do you think any local council will vote in favor? But if Malta needs a marina, I don't know whether we need it or not, but let's say we need one. Government has to decide. Again, when it comes to PV farms, to solar farms, I don't know. There is a lot of appetite in the private industry about it. They want it.
Okay.
I had meetings with the Chamber of Commerce and Industry. They're pushing for it.
Okay.
Again, people will tell you, no, we don't want it. Perhaps we don't need it to. Someone will get, richer. I read the comments when it comes to social media and all that. Someone has to decide. If we want to reach our targets, then we need solar farms. Now we can discuss. For example, whether we want these solar farms on built-up quarries, for example, and not just pristine land. That we can discuss, of course.
Jumping topics a little bit, I wanted to speak about the development control policy of 2015, which had allowed, existing buildings to have extra stories added to them. Yes. So obviously, in the last 6 years, this has kind of caused a bit of a change to the traditional look of some villages, some towns. Residents have often complained that a view that they used to enjoy is now been blanked out. They now live in the shade, for example. Now, I know that in certain sensitive areas, this isn't allowed, but are you at all considering reassessing that at all, seeing that it's been 6 years now and lots of residents have complained that their quality of life has been affected by rising stories?
Well, this dates back also to many years ago when the government back then decided to introduce the famous penthouse. So anyone who had 2-3 stories could build now a penthouse. And that's when the ball has started rolling, Then you had the local plans of 2006, and then the current Labour government introduced this DC-15, which was positive, but it has also its negative repercussions too, so to say. That's when the SPED review comes in. I think the SPED review should look holistically into all policies, and then we take it from there. We managed, and I think both governments now, it's a plus for both, managed to conserve the urban conservation areas. Perhaps we might also want to widen the urban conservation areas, but something which I'm proud to say is that we're also working on Malta's first aesthetics policy.
Wow,
we never had one.
All right.
And I think it's high time we have one to guide us, not just in the UCAs, because we managed to keep that, to conserve that.
What
but
would that
outside
entail?
UCA.
So what would that entail? Like
the
town
way
squares?
we build, the design, the colors, the shape, I mean, I'm not an architect myself, but I have meetings with the Chamber of Architects, I have meetings with private architects, and they tell me this building, which was criticized, deservedly so, in the media, could have been built in a different way, and it would have got brownie points. But they didn't. They went for, and that's where I also said that besides having Malta's first policy on aesthetics, we also need to incentivize the developer to do something better. And I said, listen, let's look into fiscal incentives. Let's look into planning incentives to help the developer doing something less conventional and more green. Let's say, for example, they have the waste storage room downstairs. They really have the parking slots. They don't just pay for doing without, They have the PVs, they have a green wall, they have the green facade. I mean, if this developer ticks all the boxes, perhaps he can get a permit in, say, 7-8 months' time. They can get a fiscal incentive. I mean, we need to push the developer from the conventional to the green, to the sustainable. And that's where the incentives come in. This is what I'm working on with my team right now.
Moving towards the end of the interview. So usually when it's election season, topics such as the economy take precedence. They're, the main things, policies usually revolve around that.
Yeah.
With climate change becoming more pressing, do you foresee that this coming election, whenever it is, will see environment, take precedence?
Well, from our end, for sure. I mean, I think that during the past, say, 20 months, I could feel, I could see, it's tangible, this shift towards the environment from my party side, my government side. Now, of course, our economic model is not the economic model that belongs to green parties. And that's where the green NGOs come in, and rightly so, and I acknowledge that, they criticize us. They say the economic model is not green enough, and they accept that. That's why they support the green parties at the end of the day. But when taking into consideration the green aspect, the social, the economic aspect, I think this party prevails. But we will see in the next election. I think, yes, the environment will be high on the agenda, if not topping the agenda. Sadly so, the opposition is without ideas here. When it comes to climate change, for example, the leader of the opposition just said that they will organize a climate change conference to start thinking about what kind of position they should take. Now, we spent like a year with our international experts building our strategy. If they manage to do it, say, in 7 months' time, they will be ready for COP27, not COP26. And that's where credibility comes in, So, hand on heart, I'm looking forward to the next election. We have the energy, we have the vision to keep on changing Malta.
Now, a bit of a personal question. You just said, that you do read the comments online on social media. So what is your kind of take on it? So you do read the comments. I know each minister, each public person kind of has a different approach. People don't read. I know recently you got into a bit of a public spat as well with a very public satirist. So what's your approach to reading the comments?
I read the comments. I know others don't. I do bother reading, and I do bother sometimes answering too. Just this morning, I answered to a few comments. There are those who are genuine, who seriously think that some kind of strategy is not happening, and you tell them no, we're doing that. I send them the link. You can read. You can you can reply back with your own ideas, and then there are those who have their own agenda. Rubbishing whatever we do. I accept that too. This is a democracy at the end of the day. But it is very important for the politician to keep in touch, even with such blogs, and reading the comments, because you get an idea what the people think. And sometimes you do understand that what you're doing is not being communicated well. And that's perhaps where climate change comes in. With Climate On, it's a very interesting campaign. Telling people where we are, where we have to be, and how we're going to get there. Perhaps we need to push more on that side.
So when it comes to responding to comments, you've responded, and not just yourself. I know Rosie and Kataya, for example, had also gone to a public spat. When your comments are emotional, or dare I say angry at times, what's going through your head when you're writing them?
Well, when family members are involved. I mean, it's not on. Sometimes they mention the kids. Sometimes they mention your parents. Even when one of your parents is going through, difficulties, health-wise, that's not on. I mean, we're all humans. I'm fine. I read the comments. Sometimes they get you better ideas too.
Okay.
So yeah, this is it. I mean, I subscribe to that. I'm a politician, so I read the comments. I sometimes engage too, and that's fine. Even if sometimes something happens and you get involved into something like you mentioned yourself.
Final question. Perfect world, Malta 2030. What is your vision for Malta, best case scenario, 10 years into the future?
Well, I think 10 years into the future, that's not enough. I mean, to change things. 10 years, I think we should focus on diversifying our economy for sure, because things are changing very fast, and we need to look into other niche markets, niche sectors, and definitely putting the environment high on the agenda. On the aesthetic side too, I think if I had to be Minister for the Environment, Climate Change and Planning in the next legislature, I think we managed to push a lot when it comes to waste management. We're investing 500 million euro with our long-term waste management plan. I think we will join the big guns out there when it comes to waste management. Climate change, we have the strategy, we need to implement it now, and we're doing that. Construction, it is this ministry that is pushing with the reform, which was very controversial in the past few years, and we're pushing on that. I think it's high time we push. Also, we're pushing on the urban greening agenda. Sometimes they say it's greenwashing. I disagree. I think we're investing a lot of millions of euro on greening the urban, where people live and they work. We're also planted to, in 2020, the biggest number of trees ever.
Wow.
It's a record. So I think in the next 10 years, we should now focus on the aesthetics of the country. That's what I would do myself.
Minister Farrugia, once again, thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you for having me here, Jonathan.
It was a great conversation. We really enjoyed it. Everyone, let us know in the comments below what you thought. If you have any questions or comments yourself for the Minister. And as always, have a day full of lovin'.